Welcome yet again, my precious people, to another episode of the Bridging Divides podcast. I am super excited. You guys are probably getting sick of me saying that, but I am so excited for our guest today, David Skolnik. David and I mean, we've known each other for probably about a year now.
Close to a year, yeah.
Close to a year now. He talk about a compelling story, just what he's been through personally within your career. I think is great. Definitely not like the conventional, like what you probably thought you'd go through in high school.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's a big thing that you guys know that we're all about is finding whatever that bridge is that you've had to build to get over that divide in your life. So, David, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Always down for a chance to talk.
Yeah.
I like talking.
And we'll make sure we have all of his info, like tag you on Instagram and everything, because he's got some awesome content on his channel as well. So you are a personal trainer.
Personal trainer, physical therapist, educator, mentor, business owner.
And the list goes on.
Yeah.
Like this guy, he's my spirit guide. Other than being
one of my clients is like, I just tell my boyfriend, like, I'm going to go see dad at the gym. He's like, you guys are the same age. He's like, yeah, he's like my father.
Yeah. Other than being, much more swole than I got to kind of posture a little bit here.
Sit up straight.
Yeah. And kind of do my biceps.
That's not helping.
No, it's not. It's really not. But suck it in, boys.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, so David, super excited to have you. Really just kind of from the beginning, when we met, and it opened up very, very quickly with what you've been through, which all you guys know, tend to be an oversharer. So I always appreciate it when other people kind of open up about what they've been through and what they've gone through. And part of the reason why I do it myself is because to let other people know that they're not alone. And so when you shared your story with me, that's the feeling that I got was, okay, there's somebody else who's been through some crap.
Vital feeling, for sure.
Yeah. So so let's kind of talk a little bit about your career, because that's also an interest that we have. So we'll kind of cover that a little bit, and then we'll kind of get into kind of the struggles or the hurdles that you've had to overcome, the divides you've bridged, to use our vernacular here, that you've kind of overcome as you've gone on to that. So PT, personal trainer, when did that start?
So I studied exercise science. That's my undergraduate degree. Graduated in 2011 from a little private university up in the Tacoma, Washington area called University of Puget Sound.
Gorgeous.
I'm from Portland originally, so it was
cool.
4-hour drive, just far enough that I knew my parents weren't going to drop in every weekend, but didn't have to fly home. Exercise science major, and I pursued that knowing I wanted to go to physical therapy school.
Okay.
So 2012 started my Doctor of Physical Therapy program, same university, finished in 2015. And moved for the first time in 8 years back to Portland. So got my first job out of school back in Portland, Oregon. And so I've been a physical therapist now coming up on 9 years. If you include internships, I've been treating patients to some degree since 2014. Mm-hmm. And then never actually trained people in a gym setting until early, like January, February 2017. I've been a gym rat my whole life, which is why I was stoked when I found out I could get a degree in exercise and leverage what I love doing in the weight room into a job.
PE isn't just a class that
but
you get out of
make more
study.
money than a PE teacher, yeah. So yeah, and so at this point I do some of both. I've over the years, especially over the last 2 years, pushed much further into the fitness side of what I do and slowly moved away from the traditional physical therapy side after working in a lot of different PT settings over the last 9 years.
Wow. No, that's awesome. And so how, and we'll get into a little bit about kind of the mental health struggles and everything that you've been through. But how has exercise, physicality, how has that helped with
Oh, dude, it's everything.
all this other stuff that you've been through?
So, I mean, the gym for me, ever since I took like a weight training class my sophomore year of high school, and even I think like 8th grade, middle school, we went through a little like weight room tour. My middle school was a former high school, so there was like a wrestling room downstairs. Okay. And then off the wrestling room was a little weight room. So like the 8th graders in PE got to like go into the weight room one time. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then so weight training as an elective in high school was like my first exposure to actually like structured strength training. And like every 15 to 16-year-old boy, it's like, wow, this is gonna make girls like me more, and I'm gonna like get jacked like my favorite athletes.
Get the ladies.
Yeah, dude. It's like I think between beginning of sophomore year and end of sophomore year through weight training class, I put on like 30 pounds, and I'm pretty sure it was all muscle, which is you got about as much testosterone as you can possibly want when you're 16. Everything works.
Yeah.
You're made of like magic and rubber, and
yeah,
indestructible. So I can't, like, in terms of exercise and like going to the gym and having fitness as a habit more than just like a hobby, it's kind of at a point now where like I don't know what I would do otherwise.
Interesting.
So it's very much like, not only is it like full of great memories for me in the gym, but it's also like a place where I've accomplished a lot of things. It's where most of my friendships have been formed, especially like since you finish school, and then like school and friends is so easy, and then real life and friendships are so hard.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like trying to find
so
commonalities for me, that's in the gym. So, I do get asked a fair amount. It's like, how are you so disciplined? How do you find the motivation to go to the gym? It's like, I literally don't know what else I would do.
Yeah.
Like whatever everyone else likes doing the most. It's like, how do you find the motivation to brush your teeth? That's about as much motivation as I need to go to the gym.
It's just what you do.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I always feel better, right? It's like the times I feel the worst or like the most anxious or the least sort of like settled or structured is when I don't have enough time to train at the level that I want to, like as hard as I want to be in the gym as often or for as long per session as I'm used to.
Yeah.
Because then I find that it becomes very hard to feel like I'm making progress towards any sort of a goal. And so that's the other big thing about the gym is like you always have something you're kind of chasing, or it's very easy to set goals short and long term. And so it keeps you on course.
Which goal setting in general, I mean, if you talk about like depression and different things like that, it's very easy to kind of fall into this like hopelessness. And so like whenever you, whatever goals you can set, however small, it always feels good to accomplish something. You can check that off, And so I imagine that obviously.
Like, are you familiar with logotherapy, that branch of psychology? Have you read Man's Search for Meaning?
Dude. By Viktor Frankl?
Yeah.
Guys.
So that's his branch of psychology.
Dang.
Yeah.
That book.
So good.
Holocaust survivor, like talks about the psychology of like the guards and the
basically who survived
prisoners,
and
who survived, and then who survived mentally and who didn't.
Which is the same. It was
incredible.
Like a 1-to-1 ratio.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So check that out. We'll put a link.
He's like the father of, it's called logotherapy. And so reading that book a couple years ago, I was like, that just hit home to me, I think, very well. I'm a pretty logical person. So kind of what you're saying, like not having goals can lead to hopelessness. And I think a lot of, in other branches of psychology, you feel hopeless. And it's like, let's try and find some abstract thing in your past from 17.3 years ago that may help explain why you're feeling hopeless now.
Yeah.
Whereas with logotherapy and with what Viktor Frankl talks about, it's more like, is your current situation one that seems like it would predict that you may feel hopeless? And it's like, why would you, like everything you're telling me about your day-to-day life sounds anxiety inducing. Why are we surprised that you have anxiety? And why is our first step not trying to adjust your day-to-day to be less anxiety inducing? So for me, it was like one of the first couple things I would need to check in on personally would be like, where's my training at? Like, do I have enough time?
Are you moving?
To go for like a run twice a week? Not just like, I have 20 minutes, but like, this is supposed to be a 4.5 mile run this week because last week was 4.25. Do I have the time to make that happen on schedule within my plan? And same with the gym, even more so. Like, am I following a plan? Do I know what I'm training for? And do I have enough time to accomplish that? And usually if those are no, That's one of the biggest predictors why I'm like just kind of generally feeling shit.
Interesting. No, yeah, no, that's great. I think that kind of I've been able to, luckily, I mean, my experience with depression and suicide, at least the height of it, when those thoughts are going through my head of, that's looking like taking my life is looking like a more and more viable option. Luckily, I'm on the back end of that, but I still struggle from time to time. But being able to take inventory and go, okay, well, I'm feeling like crap. What is going on? Like, what am I doing and what am I not doing?
Yeah.
That's contributing to that mindset.
Right.
So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I sort of had the opposite experience in terms of like the first psychologist I talked to after I was diagnosed with depression for the first time.
Yeah.
And so just to like sort of set the stage, like you sort of already know this.
Yeah.
But I was like 6 months after I finished physical therapy school, started to feel anxious, started to feel depressed. Neither of those are typical for me. Kind of like as far from normal as possible. I'm an extremely level-headed, consistent, predictable person.
Yeah.
And so the first person I went and saw ended up being kind of more on the, I don't know who I'm supposed to see. You just get a script, right? It's like trying to find a doctor of any kind. You're like, I don't know. My doctor said to go find a doctor.
Yeah.
Was more on like the Freudian side of things, I believe, which I think made me worse because it was more like, let's talk about your childhood. I'm like, I feel like shit now. And it started like a month ago. But then it just immediately, because again, you're talking to someone like authority position, you're just like, oh, maybe I should think more about any potential bad things that happened in my childhood. Maybe I should somehow inaccurately reassess every friendship I've ever had. And maybe they were all...
Because you're viewing it through the lens of now.
Like when you're looking now back. And depressed now.
Well,
so like a depressed brain is assessing fifth grade me, and I'm like,
which is a warped. Yeah. It's a totally warped lens that you're looking through.
Yeah.
So, just to back up a quick second,
sure.
because you had said something that really that resonated with me. It was so different than what I normally was like.
Yeah.
So then that's what tipped me off to, oh my gosh, like I need to see somebody. Like, what was that moment for you where you went, holy crap, like this is not me. Like, I feel like I'm in the passenger seat here. Like, how did you
My experience was I could not stop thinking. It was like a painfully acute awareness that my brain was constantly working. So it was like zero mental rest.
Interesting.
That was the difference. And more on a level of like yelling.
Like
at myself.
Mentally yelling?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not any particular thoughts. It was just like everything was happening too fast, too loud, too distracted, constantly.
Which, I mean, that brings up a point. I mean, we could have a whole series of episodes about meditation and mindfulness and
impossible.
Like letting yourself be bored, like the benefits of cutting yourself off from everything and just like mentally purging is so beneficial. But that was it for you?
That was it. It was like I was asking people, it's like, do you feel like you're thinking all the time? Because I feel like I'm thinking all the time and just like could not get a break from my own head. So like that's how I've explained to me what like being depressed was like. It'd be like, and it's not nice thoughts. It's not like, hey, bud, you're doing a great job from in here.
Yeah, no, it's all negative.
To me, it was
garbage.
like, imagine if someone was just like poking you in the ribs and there was nothing you could do about it and you couldn't even see the person poking you.
Yeah.
All the time. Like how just brutal that would be.
Yeah.
And like at some point, it's like, I'm going to go jump off of something because I can't take another poke in the ribs.
Yeah, it's just torture at that point.
Like a bee on the inside.
Well, so
stinging you from inside.
Just over and over again.
Right? Just think about that.
So to that point, though, you did get to a point where you said enough is enough, correct?
I did. Yeah.
Can you tell us what that was like? Can you share that experience?
Yeah. I mean,
I know
it got to a point where
it's a
I'm
heavy
like
issue.
7 years removed, and honestly, I have no fear of it coming back. So
That's
I'm
good.
fine talking about it.
Okay.
8 years. It just got to a point where it was like, again, the poking in the ribs analogy is kind of about as good as it gets, where it was like, it'd be better to feel nothing than continue to feel this type of way inside my head, because I felt like I was thinking so much that I couldn't have a conversation. Like I couldn't track what other people were saying because I was in my own head all the time. And like those thoughts were just getting like more and more and more negative.
Dark.
Right. So there's like, I mean, and in terms of what set this all off, like looking back at it, it was a combination of, you know, moving back to my hometown for the first, where I hadn't been in 8 years, and I was a very different person then. Like, you know, you go from 18 graduating high school to 25 done with graduate school, and like everything about me was different.
Right.
Right. But then you kind of you have that pressure. I don't know if you've ever lived very far from home, but it's like you have that pressure when you are home to like be the person you've always been, even if no one's saying it. And then, you know, my first real job, student loans kicking in for the first time, and you realize that first job isn't so great after all. Like that number you saw that you're so excited about, you're just like, what happened to that? How do I have $33 at the end of every month? I was in a relatively new relationship, so trying to spend as much time with her as possible. Now my wife, but it was like, you know, we were living in different places, so it was like every other night you're trying to like pack an overnight bag to go spend a night, and then getting up and driving 45 minutes across a bridge through Portland to get to work. And as a healthcare provider, there's a lot of pressure, right? Like I'm not a surgeon where I'm dealing with life or death, but I was dealing very much with like quality of life until death, I think is a good way to put physical therapy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
People's quality of life is very much in your hands. You know, after a knee surgery or after a rotator cuff repair, it's like, I mean, it kind of matters at 55 if you're ever going to be able to get your arm overhead again, or walk normally. It's like that's on me now as a new grad, and I was in a clinic that was busy, and there was a lot of like sort of financial and efficiency pressure rather than focusing on like patient outcomes. It was more like patient volume type of stuff, and so it was just a lot of things I think that led to overwhelm. And one of the things I definitely reflect on now in terms of the structure of things was like I also got the comfort of school taken away for the first time since I was in kindergarten, right? So it's like from the time you're 5, someone else is basically telling you this is how your year's going to go, right? You have this syllabus, and you know when the tests are, and you know what to study for, you know what you need to learn that year.
Right.
And then I was doing that until I was 25.
Right.
So I had 20 years of structure.
And then after
and then you get a job, and it's like, figure it out.
It's like, throw you in the deep end.
So all
Hope
of that,
swim.
you know, now it's like, so again, that's why like the whole logotherapy thing, it's like, if I wasn't anxious, that would have been more weird. Like, how are you not even processing how different your life is?
Yeah.
Like you're too calm. But it just got completely overwhelming. And I think because of how much structure I'd always had, I didn't know how to deal with that. Right. I went from like complete structure to what felt to me like complete chaos. Yeah. And within 6 months, my brain just broke. And so about 5 or 6 months after starting to feel depressed, I mean, I'd been on probably 5 different medications, because every time I'd go back a month later and be like, this isn't helping. I got to a point where I was like DNA testing to see if this was something genetic. I was like, maybe you've always had OCD. I was like, I don't think so. But like the way I was talking sounded like OCD. Like I can't stop thinking about the same thing over and over and over and over.
It's playing on a loop.
Searching for all this crazy internal stuff when I'm fairly confident it was like environmental factors and all the changes that happened at once. But yeah, I got to a point where it was like, I can't sleep. I don't want to go to the gym because I'm exhausted and distracted. So this thing that's like enjoyable. So like basically everything I tried that didn't work was like more evidence that nothing was going to work, right? The last 3 medications did nothing. I feel worse.
It was reinforcing that.
Like, there's
taking
no
a
month
way out
off of work on like medical leave. Worse. Now I've got nothing to do all day but think, right? Going for a walk, not helping. Going to the beach, not helping. Going to the gym, not helping. Talking to another therapist, not helping.
More of the same.
So it was just a slippery slope to the point where I was like, nothing is going to work. So I'm just going to see what happens if I take all the antidepressants I have available to me in my bathroom at one time. And I think what ended up happening was I was supposed to go to work that day. And I think I remember like the receptionist calling me. And I probably told her like, I'm not okay. And then like hung up. And then like, so then my parents are my emergency contacts. So then they call my parents, who then call 911.
Wow.
And I think, and I don't remember any of this now because like I think I got taken to the hospital on an ambulance. Like I was
Just
conscious, but I have no memory of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I
like
do remember my mom
catatonic
telling me
almost.
that the guy in the ambulance said I was very nice because I was like apologizing for inconveniencing them.
Oh my gosh. Which honestly, that's so interesting that you say that, because I think for a lot of us that go through depression and that struggle with suicidal thoughts or actions, to view ourselves as an inconvenience to those around us.
That's part of it.
That's
That's part of what makes it worse.
Oh my gosh.
Because you realize you're not contributing anything. You're just like, people are trying to help you all the time and it's not working. So it's like, I'm also now a burden.
And that's, I hate that feeling.
Oh yeah, dude. It's a terrible feeling.
You know, and it's something that I got to battle, you know, and to find those ways or those people that can tell you why you benefit them or society is so important.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I was lucky that I had enough friends and family who were just like, we're going to keep trying to help you, even though you're telling us nothing's going to work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly why you need the help, because normally you would understand that this is going to help at some point.
You just have to keep doing it consistently.
Trying. Yeah. So I ended up in like a psych facility for maybe 2 weeks after that, like a locked psych facility.
Yeah.
Which if anyone's ever been in one of those, they're not great. It's not a place to like get better. It's just a place to not hurt yourself.
Interesting. No, that, if any of you guys have had a similar experience, please let us know. But that's actually one of the things that I was telling you about. One of the partners that we want to have with our channel is a facility, but like an inpatient facility. But it seems like there might be a hole in the quality of those facilities.
So it depends. It depends on if it's a place like, I'm checking myself in, versus like I'm being discharged from a hospital bed to here because I cannot be trusted to not be somewhere the time.
It
like behind a locked door in a way.
Yeah, and it fulfills a service. Don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But it's like, so what did you do after? I guess that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Like to help continue the progress.
Well, afterward, I moved in with some family friends. Kept kind of trying to work that job. I think that was one of the other things. Like, I'm a very, like I mentioned earlier, like goal-oriented. I've had like a pretty successful life in general in terms of like accomplishing things as whether it's like an athlete or a student or whatever. And so I was like, nah, it can't be the job. Like, it's my first job. I went to school for 7 years to do this. Very hard to quit your first job or to realize that the first job is the problem, which I think was a big part of it. I think if I had a different first job, a lot of this would have been very different.
Interesting.
But I was like, no, I'm the problem, right? The job's not the problem. Like, it's that I can't do the job.
Yeah.
And so, I made a second suicide attempt, I think 3 months after that. Wow. Very similar kind of a thing. Again, like just not getting better. Continuing to talk to people, continuing to change medication.
And it just still wasn't
And again,
there
it was like, I couldn't honestly, I could tell people I wasn't suicidal just so they would leave me alone a little bit. But eventually it was like basically a repeat of the first attempt. Ended up back in the same facility and then transferred to a different inpatient psych facility in Washington State, because at this point they're like, well, we've tried most of the medications. The genetic testing was negative. There's nothing else we can do there. It doesn't seem like talk therapy is helping. Would you be open to considering electroconvulsive therapy? Which is like the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest type setup, but not to make inmates, brain dead, like to actually try and electronically reconnect some circuits.
Yeah.
So me, of course, I was like, it's not going to work, but whatever. I'm in here already.
Yeah. Might as well.
And so I got transferred up there. I was probably in that facility for 2 more weeks. Like I probably spent 6 weeks in locked psych facilities in 2016.
Wow.
Which is just like hospital food in a bed with a roommate who also tried to kill themselves. And you're like, this is cool.
Great environment.
Yeah, it's awesome. And that's what flipped the switch.
Really?
I think I had 4 or 5 treatments total. I think it was once a week. And within 2, maybe 3, I was like, I feel way better. Like, I don't think I need to be here.
Wow.
So I moved back in with my parents, and then they would like drive. It was like an hour and a half outside of Portland. So they would like drive me up for an appointment, and I'd come home the same day. I honestly don't know if it was the electroconvulsive therapy or the fucking laughing gas. Because I hadn't felt happy in like 9 months. And like those last 3 seconds, because it's light anesthetic,
Yeah.
like to put you under for the treatment.
Interesting.
It was like, oh, I feel happy. I'm out. And I'm wondering if that had any role. And I don't know if I'll ever know.
I would venture to say that it did.
Even if it was a contributing factor, fine. But whatever happened, that literally just like turned me back into the person I was before within 4, maybe 5 treatments after 9 months of nothing working.
I would love to talk to somebody that does that. If you guys would like to see that, then let us know. And if you know somebody that does that, please let us know, because I would love to talk to them.
Yeah, this was a clinic in Longview, Washington.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And the marvels of modern medicine. Oh my gosh. Like there's
so
the cognitive side that you have to change behavior
and I kept talking
thoughts.
to someone afterward. Like I had a therapist that I did connect with, but she also fairly quickly was like,
something else.
You don't need to be here anymore.
We got to do more.
No. Like once I got back from that.
Oh, I see.
Right. It was like, you're completely different.
That's
like,
insane.
This is the person who you were telling me you used to be.
That's
right?
awesome.
It's wild, dude. Like in between the 2 suicide attempts, I went to like a outpatient, just like once a week sort of like group therapy thing. And
which is vital.
Which was awesome. It was great. I mean, it didn't work, but for me. But I vividly remember, and I think I still have this written down somewhere. I think I kept the notebook. It was like one day, we have like an hour. And it was like, take 10 minutes and write down 5 things you've accomplished in your life. And I got to 4. And I was like, I have not accomplished 5 things in my whole life.
Dang.
And now I could tell you like 5 things I accomplished this morning.
That's awesome.
Easily.
That's awesome.
So it was just like, it was such a different perspective, like such a different headspace.
Now, was it that you didn't view some of the things that you had done as accomplishments, or was it that you hadn't accomplished anything?
Oh, it was that I didn't view things as accomplishments. I could have written down, I fucking made it here this morning.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, at that point, it was like, I got out of bed and I got here on time. Like, that was an accomplishment. For me, it was like, I finished school. Like, I played sports. It was like an accomplishment. It was like either massive or nothing.
So how were you able to make that shift of being able to, or let me rephrase this, how have the difficulties that you've been through, all of the depression, the suicide attempts, how has that changed how you view accomplishments? How does that change what you view as an accomplishment?
I think, well, that's a hard question to answer.
Take your time.
So it's changed that. So I'll answer your question, but I think the thing that it's changed more is what do I think is actually a problem?
Interesting.
Like, I don't view many things as problems that I can't solve.
Because you have the perspective.
I have like, this is not that bad. Like, almost nothing is that bad.
And that's, I think,
and I don't really complain.
What's it going to do?
What's it going to do? And
what's it going to
compared
accomplish?
To what? Like, what am I complaining about? Like, so, it's a waste of time, in my opinion. And also, like, most things that people complain about are nothing compared to what other people are actually experiencing. Yeah. So I don't complain much. I don't see most things as much of a problem. It's not going to bother me in a week. So, like, why do I spend any time on it? But in terms of, like, accomplishments, I don't know, I'm fortunate. I feel like right after this whole thing happened, I talked about it a fair amount on social media. And like you were mentioning earlier, like just knowing that other people have gone through stuff is really helpful. I had a surprising amount of like friends be like, I went through something kind of similar. Not to the extent that I went through.
Right, but
or just like, I feel like I'm starting to feel this way now.
What do I do?
Any input?
I had the
and
same
part of the
thing
challenge for me was like, really nothing worked. Like, I got to the point where I made 2 suicide attempts, so I'm probably not the best person to give you advice in terms of intervention, because none of the interventions really seemed to help me until I got all the way to about as extreme as you can get. But I do think like celebrating small victories is important, things like that. What I was getting at is I feel like I'm fortunate that I haven't had to maintain any specific habits to like keep my mental hygiene in check. Like I mentioned, I don't mind talking about this stuff because I literally have no fear that I'm going to trigger some recurrence.
Interesting.
Whereas I think a lot of people, once they have some sort of mental health diagnosis, they're always sort of walking on eggshells, or they feel like they have one foot on one side of the line and one foot on the other, and a gentle breeze might push them across. I don't feel like that at all.
Yeah.
So,
which I think that it's like if that's where you guys are at, I mean, it is important to be careful and cognizant of like what might push you over. But at least for me, I don't know if you experience this too, or it sounds like you have, is that it does get to a point, like the more that you share it and realize, oh, I'm not going to be ostracized.
Right.
I'm not going to be totally rejected.
And I'm not going to recreate my diagnosis all over again.
Back. Exactly.
Yeah.
The more that you do that, the more that you share, the more that you will see, I will be okay.
Yeah.
And then that helps for now. Look at where you're at now.
Right. And I think from an accomplishment standpoint, again, the other bigger shift is like I give less time and energy and effort into anything that doesn't make me happy. So like I have a lot less tolerance for stuff that makes me feel anxious.
Now, does that mean it's like I'm not going to do anything unless it's, it's like this brings me this like enjoyment. I'm only going to watch TV. I'm only going to do this. Like, what do you mean by only something that brings you happiness?
So I mean,
some people might be like, then I'm just going to say screw it. I don't care about anybody else.
Permanent vacation
poolside
mode. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
No. I'm not talking about like instant gratification happiness. I'm talking about like work I do that I enjoy. Very much like the benefit is far more in like the journey than the destination.
It's like
fulfillment. Yeah. And so I'm more confident in saying like, that's not for me. Or, even if it might hurt someone's feelings, or like not staying at a job that's not super fulfilling, or like
that was me.
Not sustaining a project that isn't working out the way I thought it would. Not because of like lack of effort or because I'm impatient, but I think what I've realized over time is like you create the time for the thing. Like it's easy to make time for the things you want to do, and so it's better to listen. When you're like constantly distracting yourself from a project, that's probably not the project you should be doing, right? If you're at work and you're constantly thinking about other things, it's probably not the job you should be doing. And I'm lucky enough to have an education and a career as a physical therapist and a fitness professional, where like I have an endless amount of opportunity, right? So I can leave one thing and start something new and not feel like I'm going to spend 6 months trying to find the next obscure job or that I have no resume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I just have less tolerance for things that make me feel, not upset's not the right word, but like things that are anxiety inducing, I'll just move on to something else.
Well, because think about it. If you find it's like a tumor that it's killing you, are you going to be like, I'll just leave it because it's been there for so long that I just can't get rid of it? It's like, no. You're going to get rid of it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So if you find something in your life that is not serving you in a healthy way, you need to find a way to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you sort of do the due diligence and be like, am I responsible for this not being enjoyable? Did I think this was supposed to happen faster? Was it supposed to be easier?
Take an inventory, an honest inventory of your actions. And if you're doing everything right, then you go, okay, what needs to change?
Hate every moment of that thing. Yeah. Don't do it.
No, I love that. Now, you may have already answered this, and I know there's some things that you have said that kind of answer this question, but for us, how do you reduce mental overwhelm? Because that is what you said had led to ultimately the two attempts.
Right.
It's hit rock bottom twice.
As bottom as it gets.
So how do you reduce mental overwhelm?
I'm not an expert at this by any means, and I have not managed to avoid it for any extremely sustained period of time. I haven't let it get bad, but when how do I want to say this? One, it helps having a partner like my wife who is sort of there through that whole period of time.
Support system.
Right? A support system, but also someone who might notice a little sign or symptom that I don't notice, or like, you seem really distracted, is usually my sort of a tell.
Interesting.
So luckily for me, more of the time, my mental overwhelm is because I try and do too many things I enjoy all at the same time. I'm not doing things that are out of obligation to someone else most of the time, or things I don't enjoy. But it's like I start so many projects inside of my own business, or I'm trying to like get so many partnerships happening at the same time, or take on new projects, or create this content. I travel and teach, right? I'm like, oh yeah, let me take on a couple more weekends this year. Oh, I just signed this new contract. That might be a couple travel things. I was already feeling really busy, and now I've got 5 more hours a week that I need to put into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you took the recycling out and you actually threw the recycling bin into the big recycling bin, and you didn't realize you did that.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit.
Whoops. So
you forgot to feed the dog, and like you do that every morning, and so it's like, I think what helps me is, and I resisted this for a long time, but it's like making sure I have the time each week to sit down and sort of plan out the week, instead of saying like, planning. I'm so busy that I don't have time to plan. Like planning feels like a thing I don't have time for, when really it's the thing that creates all the other time. So planning.
That's an interesting thing, because you don't realize how much time you have until you plan it out and you go, oh, I do actually have time to do these other things.
Dude, I just spent 3 hours last Friday morning with the client I told you who works upstairs in this building.
Yeah.
We spent 3 hours, and what she does professionally is she helps people time block, organize their time, and assess everything they have to do every single week, and figure out down to the minute how much time does each one of those things take.
Interesting.
What are your projects? What are your priorities?
So valuable.
And so, like, we figured I have 25 and a half hours a week to uninterrupted work. But 18.25 of that is already spoken for with work I'm doing. So I have 6.5 hours to work on projects that I want to build for the future. So that helps me understand. Like, I immediately texted someone after that and was like, hey, I know we had a meeting last week. I was supposed to get you some stuff about like a collaborative project. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to say no to this whole thing. Like, I simply don't have the time to put into your project the amount of effort or the amount of quality I would want to. So like maybe in 6 months, I'll circle back once I have a bunch of other stuff in like processing mode instead of planning mode.
Amazing.
I was like, 'cause I don't. We talked about maybe 3 hours a week, and it's like I just found out I have 6.5 total, and I'm not going to put 3 hours into your project when I have my own thing I want to build.
So essentially, planning and prioritizing is a way for you to
which I'm terrible at.
And knowing when to quit.
Yeah.
Knowing what to take off your plate.
Maybe temporarily, but at least quitting some things for some amount of time.
Interesting. No, and honestly, I think that we have such an aversion. I think a lot of people do, and I think it's out of the goodness of their heart, right? Because it's like, well, I want to stick to something. I want to be, be consistent.
And I want to be a member of the group.
I want to be a member of the group.
I'm a pack animal.
Right.
I want to get kicked out because I said no.
But then it can lead to
complete overwhelm and complete uselessness.
What good is the group if you're not around to be a part of it? So
I don't know if you ever had this experience when you were super depressed and like somewhat suicidal. Mm-hmm. But like I also remember in terms of like what good am I to the group? And I was like, man, the next time all my friends get together is definitely gonna be my funeral, not my birthday.
That's rough.
Yeah.
I did get to a point where I had just started investing with my brother's company, which I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. Great company, and their morals are straight as an arrow. Like, I felt very good about investing with them, right? And I was like, hey, if I invest with them, I could potentially retire before I'm 40, like comfortably, like not like multimillionaire, but comfortably, right? And I was like, that's 7-8 years in the future. I don't know if I'll be around for that.
Yeah, it's a weird headspace to be in.
It's really weird, and that was kind of a resurgence of kind of what I had gone through before, because I'd gone through like the height of all of my stuff when I was in the Navy. It was about 8 years ago, and then after I had gotten out a few years later, was in one of those positions where I just was not feeling fulfilled. Work was slipping, relationships were slipping. Yeah. Horrible coping mechanisms were coming in, and that was one of the moments where I went, I think I have an issue here. Mm-hmm. when you start thinking like,
Yeah, I don't know if I can make it 7 years.
That's not a normal thought.
No, not when you've got like 95-year-olds who are like, can't wait to turn 96.
And you're just like,
how'd you do that?
Like, yeah, if you're thinking that, you know, you might not make it to 40.
Yeah, or might not want to make it to 40.
Might not want
worse.
to. That
Yeah.
does sound worse. And it is
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you have terminal illness.
Right, right.
It's your choice. Now, David, oh my gosh, man! Like as we kind of end here, what would you say to our viewers, our audience here? What would you tell them if they are going through the same thing that you have gone through, that they feel like they're at rock bottom and there is nothing that is working and the only way out is to take matters into their own hands and stop the pain permanently through taking their life?
So again, I am a medical professional, but I'm not that kind of medical professional, right? So this is just me speaking from experience.
Yeah.
Right? This is general advice. I think the thing that helped me the most, even though I resisted it the whole time, was just leaning on the people who do see the hope when you don't have it. So I think the worst place to be, and there are plenty of people here, would be in the same headspace I was in, the same headspace you've been getting close to at certain times in your life, where it's like the only way, the best thing that could happen is to feel nothing, right? Like the permanent deletion of self. And then they have no one telling them anything otherwise, right? They don't have anyone to be like, no, this is temporary. You're not the only one feeling this way. Like, we've seen people come back from this. There's 18 more options in terms of treatment. You've tried 2 out of 20, right? So you can't give up now, even though, because again, like, part of depression is hopelessness.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that there's other options. You've already decided nothing's going to work. So you need the logical outside voice, and probably as many voices as you can find, telling you things eventually will work.
Change the environment.
Potentially change the environment.
The people you hang around. Change the input, the music, the movies, the media.
Yeah. Yes, that's part of it if the environment is playing a massive role, for sure. And so again, yeah, it's like if you have the mental capacity, depending on what stage of depression you're in, to like take a 30,000-foot view and being like, oh yeah, my life is definitely has set me up to feel like this.
Yeah.
And like, what's the biggest thing I should change? But potentially, you know, again, if you're at a stage where I was at, it's more like, don't change the people because they're the only ones who are going to save you.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Your brand new friend is not going to help. You can't even make friends at that point.
Yeah. No, again, thank you for everything. If you guys got value from this, please like and comment with what value you took from this. And just remember that there is hope, just like David was saying. Surround yourself with those people. Recognize those people that are in your life and lean on them. They love you. That's why they're still there. And just know that there is a way out. And taking your life is not the way. There is another way that can not just let you live, but actually enjoy living and feel fulfilled. I love you guys. We'll see you on the next one.